people get into it with the wrong idea of what marriage is about. The idea is that I'm gonna find somebody who is my match, they're gonna get me, life is gonna be easy, and I'm gonna just find that perfect person and it'll all be bliss. And that's actually the wrong notion of what marriage is about. And they completely avoid the process of sorting themselves out to be prepared for marriage.
What are common things that are destroying marriages in your experience?
A lot of things. There's a lot of different layers of, I think, what makes marriages not work. I think some of the most common ones are that people get into it with the wrong idea of what marriage is about. They often approach marriage as, they see these Bollywood movies or they see even just Hollywood movies, and the idea is that I'm gonna find somebody who is my match, they're gonna get me, and we're gonna have the same interests, and life is gonna be easy, and I'm gonna just find that perfect person and it'll all be bliss. And that's actually the wrong notion of what marriage is about. And it's the wrong approach from the beginning to enter into marriage. We hear that marriage is half the deen, but I think a lot of people don't understand that or why that is. And I think part of the reason why that is that our experience of ourselves is ourselves as separate. We have our own free will, we have our sort of sense of need for control and power, and we can get really deluded with our nafs of following our own trajectory and our own self-direction. And so when we go and we look for somebody in marriage who's like us, which is usually what people are looking for, you're essentially just avoiding the whole point of marriage, which is to put yourself into balance, not to just further go into the direction of where your nafs is imbalanced. We don't want to just become more of what we are. We want to become more of what our potential is, what we can become. And in order to do that, we have to put ourselves into balance, and we have to be shown in a mirror where we're out of whack, off center, out of equilibrium, out of balance. All of us are, because the perfect human being is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the perfect balance, but we need to work towards that. And so life is about working towards that. So therefore marriage has to be about working towards that. There is no notion of just staying static. So there isn't, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna find the right person, and we're gonna have this coasting, static life. It's actually, you're finding somebody, and really ultimately you should be wanting to be with whoever Allah wants for you, not who you want for yourself, because we don't know what's good for us. Allah knows what's good for us. And what's good for us is for us to come into the full possibility of our potential as Khalifatullah, and that ultimately to come into submission to Allah. And so the whole idea of marriage is that from the duality, from the two, you're able to get closer to the one. So we should be approaching marriage as a doorway to submission to Allah, to getting closer to Allah, and for self-knowledge. And so the way that we're going to know more about ourselves and therefore know Allah is by being shown where we need to do some work. And so that means the difficulty in marriage, the things that annoy you about your partner, the things that they do differently, the arguments, the different cultural differences, my family wants to do that, your family wants, those are all the opportunities for us to do this work of riyadat an-nafs, of working on ourselves. And so I think the biggest problem, going back to your question, is that people have the wrong idea of what they're engaging in marriage for. It's not just for procreation, and it's not just for having a halal situation in terms of relationship. Those are all things, and that Allah even mentions these things, that it's a place for safety, it's a place for mercy, it's a place to sort of come home to. So that's a part of marriage. And anybody who is married, sometimes you have that, and sometimes it's really difficult. And so it's the difficulty that actually provides the opportunity.
What are some psychological skills people could practice for marriage?
So I think the number one skill as an individual, there's things that people have to practice individually and then in partnership. So individually, practicing self-introspection. One of the best, I think, tools for this or ways of understanding this, Imam Ghazali talks a lot about muraqabah and muhasabah. So he has a book in the Ihya Ulumuddin on Kitab al-Muraqabah wa Muhasabah. He talks about other things that start with the letter M, but these two are fundamental to how we can bring awareness to ourselves. So we study ourselves. We study, muraqabah is witnessing the self, watching the self, being aware of what comes up. And so in marriage, that would mean your partner says something and you get irritated or you feel hurt or you feel that they're not holding you in the right way. You have to, instead of just saying they're the problem and they need to change, because we can't control other people, we can only control what is within our internal locus of control. And so we have to watch and notice what's coming up for me, so we're equipped to be able to know what work we need to do. So that's muraqabah. And then muhasabah is taking self-accountability, taking account of what you've now witnessed and understanding what do you need to do, what do I need to do to fundamentally work on changing my state. So rather than focus on, in marriage, we often focus on the other person fulfilling our rights, right? They're supposed to, everybody, the husband always goes and finds the Islamic, the literature that says what the woman is supposed to do for the husband, right? And then he gives it to his wife, like, see, you have to do all these things for me. Whereas our attitude really should be, if each person is doing for the other, if each person were to focus on fulfilling the other person's rights, then your rights would be fulfilled from the other person or from Allah really, and you're disengaged in this nafsi pursuit of getting what you want. So this is the psychological engagement in this in marriage, is that we have to fundamentally get outside of our own nafs, our own self-direction, our own notion of what we think we want or what's best. And we do that by engaging with another, right? So the whole idea of putting somebody before you is actually, yes, it's for them and it's altruistic, but it's actually the medicine that we need for ourselves to heal and to develop into our potential. And then the other thing, so that's individual, but then as a couple, it's just learning communication skills. So oftentimes people just talk to one another in the way that they're used to talking, and they wind up just talking at each other or over each other, and nobody's actually listening to the other person based on what their reality is. And so one of the really hard skills that couples need to learn is how to communicate. And that communication essentially has to be slower, and it has to be listening to what the person is actually saying and actually meaning, rather than inferring meaning based on your experience.
If a couple has no major issues in their relationship, but despite this, they're still seeing their marriage deteriorate, what can they do to overcome this?
They need to recognize and accept what the issues are that they have, because it's not that they don't have issues, it's that they're not owning up to the issues that they have. They're not paying attention. So this again would come back to muraqabah and muhasabah. They have to start to be self-reflective. A lot of people just engage with life in a very external way, where they're just focused on transactions and behaviors. And so everything's fine, they have enough money, they have everything, they have kids that are healthy, they have things on the outside, and so the assessment is, it's all good. Why aren't we happy? Or why isn't it working? It's because the real thing that everybody should be focusing on is what is going to persist beyond this dunya.
Mm-hmm.
Your house, your job, your children, all of these things that in relation to you don't have control over, that's not going to persist or sustain in your ultimate trajectory of where we're going in our post-mortem reality. So we need to, I think in this case, the couple would need to look at themselves in a deeper way and recognize, why are they here? Why are they in this marriage? And what are they benefiting from it in terms of their station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
If someone is looking to get married, what are some important things they can do to prepare for marriage?
Know themselves. The more that they can spend time doing this process of self-reflection and starting to know themselves, then that's going to be the best thing that's going to prepare them for marriage. A lot of times people spend all their time studying the other person and trying to find the right person. And they completely avoid the process of sorting themselves out to be prepared for marriage. And so that means they need to sort of understand who you are, what motivates you, what are your underlying values, what is your relationship with Allah, what is important to you. But then from there, making sure that you're working on the things that you need to work on. So this is, again, coming back to this muraqabah and muhasabah process. The more that we know what are our hang-ups, what are the patterns that come up in our life, what are the things that are unresolved that I'm not taking account of and not looking at, because certainly if you don't deal with them before marriage, they're absolutely going to come into your marriage. And so oftentimes where we have problems in our life or things aren't going, and we think, oh well, if I just get married, it will all be taken care of, it will be solved. And that's actually it's the reverse. Really, we should sort out ourselves first, and then and you're not going to sort yourself out in completion first, but at least spend time fully committing to that process of self-direction, that process of self-introspection and self-accountability before you even think about going into marriage. Mm-hmm. And then once you're getting closer, once you've started that process, you're in that process, that's a habit for you, and you know that you're going to do that within marriage, then the approach to seeking a partner needs to be more than just, am I attracted to them and do our families get along? We define taqwa, because we know the Prophet ﷺ said we should find somebody with taqwa, but then we usually assess taqwa based on behavior. How much do they go to the mosque? How much Quran do they read? These are all good behaviors, but what is motivating those things? What is their relationship with Allah on a level of taqwa, of actual God consciousness? And how does that play out in their life? And then, as you get closer to actually having that conversation of marriage, then you need to move away from the romantic nature of do we love each other? Are we good for each other? And really get into the brass tacks of thinking of this partnership as a business venture, and really sorting out, like, what is your vision statement? What is your mission statement? Who's going to be the treasurer? Who's going to have this position? What do you feel about education? How do you feel about disciplining children? What is your stance on family living with us? What about travel? All these things, if you don't have conversations beforehand, they're going to crop up and you're going to be unprepared to deal with them.
As a counselor, what advice do you wish more couples practiced?
Like people that are already married?
Yeah.
Communication. When it comes down to any issue that a married couple is dealing with, the thing that's causing the problem comes down to the way that they're communicating. And I don't just mean like saying things, but they have to develop a way of communicating that's not just based on words, but that you're actually developing a heart-to-heart connection. And so this requires, again, each individual to spend time in their own self-reflection, and then for them as a couple to spend time in really getting to know the person from their standpoint, from their reality, to have empathy and to spend time not just approaching one another from our own perspectives. And that means really prioritizing the development of their heart-to-heart connection in a way that is not focused on just sort of going about business in the dunya. I think that means, and this, even when people have children, when couples have children, that needs to persist. They need to maintain the connection with one another on a heart-to-heart level. And I don't just mean romantic heart-to-heart level, but spiritual heart-to-heart level of like, what are you going through? What is your state? So every day they should be checking in on a level of not just saying, hey, how's it going? And then they tell them what they're doing, but actually in Arabic, kayfa halak means, how is your state? It's not just what's going on, but what is your state? And so if the couple got together every single day and honestly answered this question in the way that it means in Arabic, kayf al-hal, what is your state? This would be the best thing that a married couple can do.
Should conflict be avoided in marriage?
No, absolutely not. Conflict should be embraced and understood as the path to know oneself to get towards a healthier marriage and to fulfill the notion of marriage being half the deen. We have to, avoiding conflict is essentially avoiding opportunity to get closer to Allah.